Hello, I'm Alina Smith with MCHHS Advisement Center, and I am going to go over some tips for using the search for classes feature when you're registering for classes or trying to find out about classes. So to get there, we're going to go to add, drop, or search for classes. As a student, I would recommend using search for classes in the add or drop class feature if you're planning on using it to register for a class. I cannot access that since I am not a student, so I'm going to show you how to use it just through search for classes. But if you do it through add or drop classes, you can then search for a class and add it to your summary and add it to your schedule. So the first thing you do is select your term. If you're ever wondering if something is offered in the summer, it can be helpful to do a class search in a previous term, summer term, or if you're trying to see if it was offered in the fall traditionally or something, that's just a little hack that you can use to see what's traditionally been offered. We're going to go ahead and look ahead to the next semester. So when you see search for classes, the searching for a specific class is pretty straightforward. For example, if I'm looking for BMS 307, I can start typing BMS. Put in my class code, hit search, and it's going to show me all of the classes. So things to pay attention to here are what is available. This is full. If you start to see red, that means it's full. You'll notice that this is a class that says linked. That's because it is a lab and lecture combined in one code. So you will have to select a lab and a lecture. You can't just do one without the other. So different things like that are important to look out for. And I would also say down here, so I like to set it to 50, so you can see all the options. Sometimes I'll catch myself freaking out like, oh, I'm missing something. It's because I don't have it set to see everything. So like with this, these are your lectures here. Everything else is a lab. You can tell because the sections are labeled differently. So searching for a specific class, those are things I recommend paying attention to. You have your instructors here. If there's a class where your advisor has encouraged you to reach out to try to get a permission code or override for it, if you select a name, it's going to give you that email address. So lots of helpful things here, more information about a class and its times if you hover over it. You can also select and find out about course section comments that will give you prerequisites and things, let you know if something is reserved, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's probably the easiest way to use this, but you can also use search for classes to do a lot of other interesting things and find other classes. So you can search by instructor. If you know you want to take a class with a specific instructor, you can start typing in their names and narrow it down because there are a lot of instructors on campus. Another thing you can do is just search a subject area in general. One thing I recommend doing if you are doing that, like you're looking for a BMS elective, for example, because you need that for your major, I would definitely use the level and search undergraduate because you'd be an undergraduate student if we're advising you, and you don't want to accidentally try to sign up for a graduate level class. So that one's a really helpful thing to use if you're trying to narrow down your options. Another thing that's important to note is modality just means how the course is delivered. So is it a blended course? Is it an internet course, which is what I would select if you're trying for online, not this online video, traditional. You can also select for online or in person this way. There's an online campus that would give you online classes. And then if you're trying to stay on campus, I recommend just selecting Springfield, Missouri. Attribute is very helpful. This is what I use when I'm trying to help students identify general education courses. So a lot of times students know they need an arts class, for example. So those are GEC stands for general education, or you can, I think it's listed as gen ed. So you'll go in for gen ed, start searching that, and then you can select the one that you need. So they need an arts class. Maybe they're trying to choose the best option from multiple different gen ed categories. So maybe they also need humanities. So we can add that too. And you can search for multiple codes that way. When you search, it's going to tell you over here what it means. So this is a humanities gen ed. This one is an arts gen ed. So you can see that in the attribute label. Very, very helpful when picking gen eds. Another thing I would say is part of term. I often have students in the first few weeks of class, maybe they've decided to drop a course, but they need to pick up another class so they have enough credit hours. So using part of term, you can find a first or second block class, which can be really helpful. Sometimes students want to take a class in the intersession, like that time between semesters. So you can start by searching intersession. So all of that, very helpful. Another thing I like to point out to students is if you're really trying to add a class, it's helpful to know like all the sections you're looking at are going to be available to you. So you can always select open sections only, so you're not having to weed through all of the classes that are reserved. Another thing you might notice, particularly if you're searching for a general education level course, like English 110, is that when you hit search and you start looking at your different options and locations, you might see high school options. These are dual credit classes that high school students can take. So that's when it can be really helpful to go into location or campus and select Springfield, online, whatever options you want available to you, and that will cut out all of those high school options. I've noticed that particularly with some of my freshmen and sophomore who are trying to get into a gen ed class, and you have to weed through all those high school options. So that's just kind of a brief overview of some helpful options when it comes to the search criteria here. If you are using it in add or drop, I'll use English 110 again as an example. So what you would see in the add or drop is an add option over here on the right. So if you decide I want to take this English 110 section 1, you can select that. Oh, one other thing, let me show you. The other really nice thing about using the search for classes feature is it should tell you if there are reserved seats. Okay, so this is an honor section, so you can see that honor section label there. This one I think does have reserved seats as well, and you can find that here. So reserved for psychology majors only. Also, it should show up here. It doesn't look like they've labeled it that way, but often I would look out for that there too. Are there reserved seats? Let's see, English 110, sometimes reserved seats. Let's see if that happens there. So yeah, you can see it here. And you'll see like there's 22 seats, but they have reserved only 11 of them. So if you are not falling into the group that it's reserved for, which you can find out here, seats are reserved for Evening College Plus. So if you're not an Evening College Plus student and you see all of the unreserved seats are taken, that means you wouldn't be able to get one of these remaining seats. So that's something that's good to pay attention to as well, particularly if you're late in the registration season, or if you're looking at online classes. You'll notice a lot of times it's with those online classes, look for those seat reservations. So you don't try to add a class, you can already go ahead and avoid it when you're picking a section.